embrace that physical intimacy, again, does not have to come along with the like, ooh thing. Okay, hi everybody. Thanks for coming back if you've been here before, or hi, welcome if you're new. My name's Mickey, I'm a therapist, and we talk about therapy things on this channel. We are talking about sex and intimacy today because there are a lot of sex and intimacy tips videos being made by fundamentalists and like people who are just not super qualified to speak about this issue. So I wanted to, instead of just debunking bad advice, potentially offer you guys some nice evidence-based advice that is supported by, you know, the field that I work in, by other professionals in the field also, in the hopes that if sex and intimacy are something that you are either struggling with or wanting to just like level up your life there, that we can help you find some resources to do that. So we're doing that. Before we talk about it though, I want to shout out my own merch because it's so cool. I'm very excited about it. We just dropped a like fall spooky season merch line. So if you want to go shop that, link is in the description. This is the Sinful Little Bitch design, but we also have a Girl Defiled design and the Swinger Summer Camp merch. So go check that out if you want to buy them. Okay, thanks. So I don't want to gild the lily too much. Let's just talk about 5 tips to improve your intimacy and or sex life. Tip number 1 is to explore novelty. This can be as simple as having sex or like being physically or sexually intimate in a new position or in a new location, or as involved as like the full role play with the new characters and scenes and names and wigs and the whole thing, like building a sex room. If you haven't watched that show, by the way, highly recommend. Exploring novelty in your sex life is particularly helpful for those of us who are neurodivergent or who have ADHD, because our brains tend to do the thing where we're very easily distracted. And so novelty during intimacy can be really helpful to keep your body physically grounded and engaged and to help keep your mind stimulated. This can look a whole bunch of different ways. This can include sex toys. This can include sensation play. This can include sex with different partners. This can include like a whole bunch of different things, but whatever that looks like for you in your own sex life is perfectly okay, so long as we're being safe with our own bodies and safe with other people's bodies. But exploring that novelty and giving yourself permission to try new things can be really fun and exciting. And it doesn't have to look like the sort of like sex dice, sex cards, although if those are useful to you, those are also great implements. But there's a lot of really wonderful ways to explore this, especially now that things are becoming more easily available digitally. Like listening to erotica with your partner could be a great way to sort of make things new and interesting. So explore whatever that looks like for you, but really embracing like a sense of newness or a sense of like we've never tried this before can be helpful. Before we get too much deeper into this week's video, I want to pause and give a shout out to this week's sponsor, adamandeve.com. Thank you so much to Adam and Eve for sponsoring this week's video. I'm super excited because they gave me a very special discount code to share with y'all. If you go to adamandeve.com and you use code Mickey, you will get 50% off one item plus free shipping in the US and Canada. So go show Adam and Eve some love for showing me some love and helping me continue to make the content that I like to make. Adam and Eve also has discreet shipping, which I love, so that my neighbors don't know, what all is sitting on my front porch. So go check out adamandeve.com, use code Mickey for 50% off, and let's get back into the video. Tip number 2 is to learn about responsive desire versus spontaneous desire. This is particularly helpful for those of us who are in relationship with a person who has the opposite desire type as us, because it can feel very frustrating to have a partner who is responding to their own desire type when it's different from yours and not really understanding like, why don't you get me? To give like a very bare bones summary, responsive desire essentially means that getting in the mood for you is very much dependent on responding to stimuli. This doesn't necessarily have to look like foreplay. Sometimes it's just like having a conversation about sex, seeing something that's sexy, thinking about sex in your own brain and kind of like mulling in that thought over time, maybe someone like gently touching, caressing your back, those types of things. And then gradually over time becoming interested in having sex or being intimate. Spontaneous desire is very much the picture of like, I'm just walking down the street and all of a sudden I'm aroused and I really want to have sex right now. Both of these things are morally neutral. Both of these are perfectly valid ways to experience arousal. But when we have that mismatch in a relationship, particularly when there's only 2 partners, it can feel kind of confusing to try and meet your person where they're at. So learning about what each desire type needs, what feels good and supportive to each desire type is a really useful place to start. And especially having conversations with your partner or partners about what this looks like for you. What is it that this looks like for you? What do you need from me? This is a great place to, first of all, just deepen your connection with your people, because that's very helpful in the realm of like improving intimacy, but also to help us understand like what it is that we're looking for, what we're needing when we're talking about intimacy and like that sexual closeness. There are a number of people on the internet who are much more qualified to speak about this than I am. I will link some of their ats in the description, people who have like finish their clinical sexology programs and things like that and are like certified sex therapists are a great resource. Folks are giving out information for free on the internet nowadays as licensed professionals. So I'd very much encourage you to go check those resources also if this is of interest to you. Tip number 3 is particularly important for those of us who have been socialized as women or who like experience society where like society views us as femme or female. Practice experiencing intimacy rather than performing. In a world that objectifies women and femme people particularly, it can feel very difficult to like lose ourselves in these moments of sex and intimacy. And a lot of that is related sometimes to this view that we are sexual objects whose job is to be sexually arousing to others rather than being sexually aroused. It's very suffocating sometimes to have this view that even while enjoying an orgasm, for example, we're supposed to look sexually appealing to someone else. And so this can sort of cloud our head and make it feel very overwhelming and also distance us from our body. When we talk about experiencing intimacy fully, it's important that we be able to ground ourselves physically in our physical beings. It's hard to do that when we're sort of mentally picturing like, what do I look like right now? What is someone else seeing? Do I smell bad? Do I look a certain way? Am I saying something? Was that embarrassing? Am I too loud? Am I too quiet? Am I saying too much? Am I not saying enough? Do I have rolls from this angle? Do my boobs look weird? Does my butt have cellulite on it? Like, that's all very overwhelming and confusing and not really lending itself to fully experiencing sexual intimacy. When we make the shift to view intimacy as a shared experience between partners, it helps us to, first of all, fully immerse ourselves in the experience, but also to let go of this expectation that our job is to be consumed. Especially for those of you who have experienced this, I want to encourage you to fully embrace that sex is something that we participate in. It's something that we share mutually with partners. It's not something that's taken from you, and it should never feel so like something that you are giving away to another person. It's something that should be mutually enriching, mutually enjoyable, and something that allows us to feel connected to our own body and our own selves, but also to a partner. So practice making this shift. Notice, the next time that you're experiencing intimacy, where is my mind wandering to? What are the things that feel pertinent and important to me in this moment, and how can I recenter that to be about my own desire, my own safety, my own pleasure? And also practice communicating about this with your partner. It can feel very freeing to have that understanding that like, hey, I noticed that this is happening for me, and so I'm trying to make this shift where like I'm not viewing myself as a sexual object anymore. I am a sexual being who is going to be in sex and intimacy with you rather than sort of being a thing for your viewing pleasure. So there's lots to work on there and lots to unpack there. Again, I want to encourage you to utilize the resources in the description if you want more work around this, and potentially to explore sex therapy if that's something that's interesting to you. It's a perfectly valid and useful field, and there's lots and lots to be unpacked and learned there. So if it's something that's of concern for you, there are resources for you. Tip number 4 is to embrace the idea that foreplay is happening all day, every day. To be clear, a lot of like sex therapists and sexologists don't super love the term foreplay because it is very like heterocentric in that like this is like the main event of sex, but for the purpose of easy digestion, the stuff that leads up to being intimate with your partner, that's happening all day, every day, not just the 15 minutes before you decide that you want to initiate intimacy with your partner. This can sound kind of weird. I don't mean to say that you should be trying to like sort of sexually tantalize your partner all day, every day, but what I mean is that in a relationship where we feel like our needs are met, where we feel seen, where we're feeling heard and valued, it feels a whole lot easier to make this switch from like, I need to, do my laundry for work tomorrow to like, ooh, sexy fun times. This feels good. This feels exciting. I might want to do this. In a relationship where we're not feeling seen, we're not feeling heard, and like, for example, our partner is neglecting household responsibilities, our partner is forgetting birthdays or emails, or our partner, rubs our feet and like doesn't really give a shit about it and rubs them for 2 minutes and doesn't really participate in it. It's a lot harder for us to feel this natural shift into sex and intimacy because there's this difference there. There's like a disparity there that it's important for us to address that. So if you're noticing that there is a trend for you and your partner or partners, and it's difficult to transition into sex, or especially if you're being turned down a lot, sometimes it's very important for us to do the reflection, not on like, why is my partner saying no, but like, what am I doing that's not contributing to a yes, that's not contributing to us both mutually enjoying this sexually intimate experience? How can I adjust my behavior, my perspective, myself myself to make our relationship a more conducive environment where we both feel safe and excited and like comfortable to explore that intimacy with one another. This might look like doing chores and like sort of daily responsibilities, but it might also look like just getting really deep in the shit emotionally with your partner. Sometimes when we have heavy stuff on our hearts or our plate, we're not really feeling very sexy, you know? And so as food for thought, this is another great place where it's really helpful to sit down and have a conscientious and clear conversation with your partner or partners about like, hey, let's have like a sort of like proverbial state of the union here. What's going on? What's going good? What can we improve on? What do you need from me? How are you feeling seen? How are you not feeling seen? Etc., etc. Like this open dialogue really lends itself to this idea of being seen, which then can lend itself to sex and intimacy feeling a lot more intuitive and authentic. The last tip that I want to share with you guys, tip number 5, is to embrace intimacy without the idea of sex necessarily. Again, the idea of like penis and vagina equaling sexual intercourse is very heteronormative and also not true. But even in those relationships where we have the genitals that typically match up with that expectation, intimacy does not equal sexual intercourse. And especially for folks who have a lower libido or like lower sexual desire in a relationship, there can be a lot of feelings of pressure, fear, and expectation around the idea of sexual intercourse. So much so that sometimes we get caught in a negative feedback loop where your partner rubbing your back, for example, this is a very common joke in heterosexual relationships that like all I wanted was a back rub. This attitude sometimes lends itself to this idea that physical intimacy always comes along with the expectation of sexual intercourse. That doesn't have to be true. It can feel very freeing and very safe to embrace this idea that for X amount of time, we are going to practice physical and sexual intimacy without the expectation of sex. Maybe that just means rubbing each other's backs. Maybe that just means cuddling naked. Maybe that just means exploring each other sexually and intimately without the expectation of actual sexual intercourse, whatever sexual intercourse looks like for you and your partner or partners, because it allows us to really embrace being physically and sexually loved and seen by our partner. So practice embracing this idea of sex and like sexual intercourse being separate from physical intimacy, because sometimes just that physical closeness is also what a partner is craving when they're trying to initiate sex with you. So again, this is a great topic to have a conversation about like, what are we actually needing here? What are we really looking for? Are you trying to connect with me? Is physical closeness a way that you feel seen and connected and valued? And so if that's the case, how can we create physical closeness without pushing against this discomfort that I have with sexual intimacy? And of course, this is like notwithstanding for folks who are asexual. Some folks will just not experience sexual desire at all, or will experience sexual desire in a different spectrum. That's perfectly valid, and we should not be pressuring anybody ever, but particularly asexual folks, to like get there one day. Asexual folks are not just folks who like sex and are broken. That's not true and that's not real. So please be mindful and careful and also validating of yourself if this is you. But for folks who do want to experience sex and sexual intercourse with your partner, embrace that physical intimacy, again, does not have to come along with the like ooh thing, and can just be separate and a thing that's enjoyable and fun, and then we're done. And then we just keep watching TV and have a great night. I hope that this is helpful to you and or useful. Like I said, there's a lot of shitty advice about sex and intimacy on the internet, particularly from the religious lens. And so I wanted to talk about this because it's an important resource for folks to have in the goal of us feeling like our best sexually liberated and safe selves. So let me know what you guys think and feel. Definitely like the video if you like the video. Subscribe to the channel. We make content like this in a cute therapist reacts moment every now and again. So I'd love to have you stay and share the video to help the channel grow and to help each other grow. And I will see you guys next Saturday. Okay, bye.